This is a potentially trashy tale of a man of many pseudonyms. Hello, I'm Tim and I have too many books. A few months ago I came across a writer called Roger Longrigg who seems to have a lot of pseudonyms, 7. Now that's not a record, Donald E. Westlake had at least 13, but it is rather a lot. It was very noticeable that Roger Longrigg used a number of his pseudonyms to write some rather, well, trashy books. Now at the time of recording we are in August and the BookTube event GarbAugust is going on. This is where we celebrate trashy books or garbage good books. GarbAugust is created by CriminOlly and there are a large number of co-hosts with this which will be listed in the description below. There has been some debate amongst the hosts of GarbAugust as to what exactly we mean by trashy or garbage books. For some people it encompasses badly written books, but for others the books need to be decently written, the person writing the trash needs to be aware that they're writing trash, but also that the trash is sensationalist and rather overwrought in some ways. But the writing doesn't have to be bad, which might be a good thing in the case of Roger Longrigg, because I haven't found too many bad reviews of his work. GarbAugust this year has the subtitle 3D because there are a large number of dimensions to it, as well as the general GarbAugust requirement to read at least one trashy book during August. There are also themed weeks going throughout August and a GarBingo card so that you can check how garbage your books might be. Roger Longrigg was born in Scotland in 1929 and died in 2000. He worked initially in an advertising agency before switching to full-time writing in the late 1950s. He had a lifelong interest in horse racing and other equestrian activities, and his writing under his own name was mostly on those subjects. But for his pseudonyms, he did an awful lot of other rather interesting stuff. We start with Roger Longrigg's first book, published under his own name, A High-Pitched Buzz, in 1956. This is a comical workplace tale about a man in an advertising agency. I've read a little of it and it comes across kind of like some Kingsley Amis, think Lucky Jim or That Uncertain Feeling. While the first of Roger Longrigg's books doesn't really qualify as garbage and doesn't really fit into GarbAugust, I think the second one does. In 1962, under the pseudonym Rosalind Erskine, Roger Longrigg published The Passion Flower Hotel. The Passion Flower Hotel tells a tale of a group of girls at an English boarding school who decide to set up a bordello or house of negotiable virtue in the school gymnasium to service the boys' boarding school from down the road. So the book, this one, sold extremely well, and according to the blurb on the back of this, sold over 350,000 copies. It was helped by the idea that Rosalind Erskine, the author, was in fact a teenage girl and she was writing a sort of satire on her own experiences. Now this book is not particularly sexually explicit, it's rather naughty and cheeky, as was the fashion in those days. The vibes from this book I get are rather like the Centrinians movies, where you have Ronald Searle's original cartoon scamps, but the films include older schoolgirls who are seen as a lot sexier and a lot more sexually active. And I think that's what they're kind of going for. It was deemed acceptable in those days. These days, this book would probably get you cancelled just for reading it. But as I said, this book was very successful. It spawned 2 sequels and also a West End musical, with music composed by John Barry of James Bond and Oscar-winning fame, and lyrics by the actor Trevor Peacock. As far as I can make out, it ran for about 6 months in the West End, which is pretty good for a musical. The musical is listenable to online, and I will leave a link in the description. John Barry is a pretty good composer, so the music is pretty good. The noise that the cast makes is also pretty good, but the lyrical content is decidedly dodgy. There is far too much of this fetishization of schoolgirls, which is really not acceptable these days. This is perhaps something that might have worked at the time, and especially as they thought that the author was a teenager, but really doesn't work now and is distinctly unsuitable. Roger Longrigg's next pseudonym was Ivor Drummond, and the book that he launched Ivor Drummond with was The Man with the Tiny Head from 1969. The book opens on a yacht in the Caribbean. There's an older man, a very young girl, and somebody is filming it for blackmail purposes, but the film turns into a snuff movie. This is the first of 9 books which feature a James Bond-like team, consisting of Lady Jennifer Norrington, Alessandro Di Ganzarello, and Coleridge Taylor. This book appears to fit quite well with the GarbAugust requirements of conspiracy theories, gangs, and possibly kinky sex. And also the book series has some rather wonderful titles. So, Priests of the Abomination, A Tank of Sacred Eels, A Necklace of Skulls, and The Stench of Poppies. As with other Roger Longrigg books, these do have a light touch and a certain amount of humour attached to them. For his next pseudonym, Laura Black, Roger Longrigg delved into historical fiction. His novel from 1977, Glendraco, is set in the 1860s in Scotland. The heroine, Kirsty Drummond, runs away from her grandparents who are trying to fix her up in a loveless arranged marriage, and she heads to her other grandfather's house, Glendraco, in the Highlands of Scotland. Now, I'm not sure that this book has the nowadays requisite hot Highland hunks in it, but the red-headed Kirsty does have a lot of suitors. While at Glendraco, Kirsty discovers many secrets. We are told we have characters with smouldering passions, secret vices, and that there will be attempted rape and white slavery in the wilds of Glasgow. Now, this might not be as racy as contemporary Highland-set historical novels, but it certainly fits into GarbAugust and does quite well on the GarbBingo card. Roger Longrigg caused quite a stir when he was revealed as the author of the Passion Flower Hotel and its sequels, rather than the allegedly teenaged Rosalind Erskine. With his next pseudonym, Frank Parrish, he courted similar controversy, but for slightly different reasons. The book here is Fire in the Barley from 1979, the first of 8 Dan Mallet novels, featuring a criminal and poacher who finds himself having to solve crimes simply in order to exonerate himself. This book got very good reviews, and people saw him as a very fresh voice. In 1980, it was shortlisted as Best Novel in the Edgar Allan Poe Awards, or the Edgars. This book is probably best known for a popular anecdote about it. Because this was the first Frank Parrish novel published, many people thought that this was an interesting new author, including the people behind the John Cheever Mystery Awards, and it apparently won the prize for first novel. Now, I'm a little bit suspicious about this. It's a great story, of course. A writer who has written 20 books suddenly winning an award for first novel. That's a lot of fun, but I can't find any really good sources for it. If you search for John Cheever Prize on the net, you'll get told that he won a Pulitzer Prize, which is great, but not interested. Apparently, John Cheever Prizes are awarded by the Boston Literary Festival, but I can't find any trace of it on their website. I've also reached out to a popular and or unpopular booktuber from Boston, and unfortunately he doesn't seem to know anything about it. While this is a great story and is often repeated, I'm not so sure that it's actually true. Now, while we have been tippy-toeing around the trash pile, in the next book we are going to be diving Scrooge McDuck-like straight into the garbage. Yes, Roger Longrigg's next pseudonym was Grania Beckford, a writer of Edwardian erotica. And the book is her second book, Vices and Virtues, from 1980. Now, last month's major BookTube event was Jane Austen July, and this book could have qualified for that. It is an erotic retelling of Jane Austen's novel Persuasion, set, of course, in Edwardian times. It is fairly explicit and is told mostly through the eyes of Lady Russell, who is a sprightly widow, shall we say. On the back of this book there is a rather interesting quote from Grania Beckford herself. The most erotic books are the worst novels, being self-indulgent, gratuitously dirty, or plotless. The best novels are the least erotic, since sex is apt to become an occasional and subordinate episode. What waits to be written is a very erotic book, which is also a very good and original novel. This is something of a hostage fortune, but the book seems to be moderately well reviewed, except when people read it thinking it's going to be a Jane Austen spin-off and actually end up with something that they regard as more like E.L. James, although Roger Longrigg is much better than E.L. James. The next pseudonym of Roger Longrigg is Megan Barker, and we have her book Black-Eyed Susan from 1982. This might be seen as a Regency stays ripper. A young woman whose disgraced father has just died goes to live with her aristocratic godfather. We are told that she is marked by a ferocious act of lust that leads her into the underworld of Regency London, with its gambling tables, horse racing, and desperate men and women. It does sound rather fun and, may tick off some of the GarbAugust cards. It's probably going to make an interesting contrast to modern day romances set in Regency England. For his next pseudonym, Domini Taylor, Roger Longrigg moved into the world of psychological thrillers. In his book Mother Love from 1983, we have Helena Vesey. She is a divorcee and is devoted to her son Kit, but her facade as a loving mother cracks when the son that she obsessively loves gets married and she discovers that he has been in contact with her hated ex-husband. She is out for revenge, and it's going to get murderous. This was turned into a television series scripted by Andrew Davis and starring Diana Rigg and David McCullum. So that's Roger Longrigg and his 7 pseudonyms, and I hope to get through quite a lot of these books during August. His Frank Parrish and his Ivor Drummond books are available on ebook, and I believe that Frank Drummond is available on Kindle Unlimited, and I believe that the Ivor Drummond books are available via Kobo Plus, if you have that, and you can therefore get those books for free as well. As for the others, well, some of them are rather difficult to get second hand, but if you know your way around the internet, and the Internet Archive especially, maybe you'll find ways of reading these books. Enjoy.